The Iowa caucuses had something for everyone. There was a lot of love.
Reagan loves Iowa right back.
Yeah. A little hate.
And they closed in on me. It was real scary because they had me down on my knees trying to pick up my sign and wouldn't leave. Pushed me, grabbed my hairband, punched this man here in the side. No.
We promised to bring the crime rate down.
And plenty of excitement. All the candidates were there, shaking hands, but it would take them 30 years to reach enough people to win that way.
Responded.
So they gave speeches, little ones
and new ideas
and big ones. The Democrats were having so much fun.
Hello. Hello.
But the president came to town. They all asked for help.
With your help, we will.
And I hope that tonight you can help me get on the track, get on the path to fulfilling that purpose.
From different sources.
We pray God that you stand by our leaders of today.
Reagan put the Democratic concerns in his rally.
He is isolated in the White House. He doesn't know there are hungry people in our country. He thinks people who are homeless are homeless by choice.
America is not a jungle where the rich are heroes and the hungry are hustlers.
Those who suggest that somehow our policies are unfair are the same ones who gave this country economic stagnation and ruinous inflation. My, aren't we happy we stuck to our guns?
I thought of the guns of the Marines and of our ships off the coast of Lebanon. I thought of the guns of American Rangers and Marines in Grenada. I thought of the guns of American helicopters in Honduras and El Salvador.
American taxpayers' dollars are paying for shells being launched from our ships, firing into villages in central Lebanon and killing innocent women and children. And
we don't want our kids to die in Lebanon.
If catastrophe were to strike in the Middle East or I believe this administration would put American combat forces ashore, tragically cost the loss of American lives unnecessarily.
Some candidates were confident.
Tonight is the beginning of the end of the Reagan administration.
This race is going to be a winning race. I'm going to go all the way to the White House, and we're going to govern this country the way it ought to be governed.
Others weren't too sure.
I wouldn't speculate. What if Mondale does? What if he comes in second? You know, whether he will come up to those expectations or not, or whether we will come up higher or not, I don't know. We'll know that tomorrow night, I guess.
And reached for an issue.
We're being outspent so many times over by the 20 million or so that labor's putting in getting the support of the unions was to go down and promise to match foreign subsidies, dollar for dollar, subsidy for subsidy.
They argued about how well off we are.
No Republican should hesitate asking people if they're better off than they were 4 years ago.
And people who have lost their jobs, and there are 5 million under his policies, aren't really going to think things are better under Ronald Reagan.
And whether we would blow ourselves up before they could get to office.
We are sick of this insane arms race that gives nightmares to our children.
We are closer to the danger of a Holocaust with the Soviet Union than we have been since the Cuban Missile Crisis of a generation ago.
I am increasingly worried, not only about war in Central America, but about war and American involvement in conflict in the Persian Gulf.
Many other issues are, of course, important. But if we blow ourselves up in a nuclear war, those issues will not matter.
They spoke of future hopes.
This is the campaign that does represent hope and promise for this country's future. We'll begin the process of changing the course of American history.
We as Republicans have a bold vision for the future.
And traditional values.
We want a president who will face reality, get those deficits down, and will fight for American workers.
We will do all a president of the United States can do to cope with the two prime issues of our time and the need to straighten out the economy and achieve full employment, a job for every American, a restoration of the work ethic, where everybody who wants to work can work.
We want a president, they said, who understands American values, who understands that we're all together in a community, in a family, in a nation where we care for one another again.
Some voters had made their choice.
I think Rich Mondale, he's had experience as vice president. I think that he's better versed in foreign policy.
I just think Reagan is the man who can do the job, that's all.
I'm leaning toward McGovern.
Others remained unconvinced.
He did not sign on as a close age for college students or future college students.
In the end,
we have McGovern with 11, uncommitted 10, Mondale 43, Cranston 27.
when all the votes were counted, there were some big winners and big losers.
The biggest thing we needed to correct in El Salvador is the...
John Glenn is in the corner back there, John Glenn.
As John Glenn's hopes hit the dust. Whether Mondale can maintain his commanding lead, whether Hart can make another strong showing in New Hampshire, and whether Glenn can come back from his crushing defeat here, this is only the first in a long series of primaries. There will be many more, and when they're all over, 1/3 of the active voters will have had a voice in the selection of the party's nominee. And hopefully, they'll have seen and heard enough of the two candidates to choose one for president. If they haven't, they still will. This is Mike Snow in Des Moines. At the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, and we don't have all the results yet, but Gary Hart has won decisively in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Oklahoma. He's barely won in Florida, and is expected to take Washington and Hawaii. On the other side of the ledger, Mondale has beaten Hart in both Alabama and Georgia. Must-win states if he's to keep his candidacy alive. McGovern finished second, tied with Mondale, but far behind Gary Hart, and he has just withdrawn himself from the race, as he promised to do before. For Mondale, this may be the start of a scrappy comeback or a last gasp before the flood. Either way, it firmly establishes Gary Hart as the front runner. And the big races in the next week, Illinois and Michigan, may well decide who's to be the eventual winner. This is Mike Snow in Washington. Mondale won decisively in Iowa, beating Hart by 3-1. But within 2 weeks, he would be crushed by New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont, where Hart beat him by more than 3-1. Hart's meteoric rise was to continue on Super Tuesday, where he won every state but Alabama and Georgia, but it badly crashed in the shoals of Michigan, Illinois, and now New York. The latest must-win state for Hart is Pennsylvania, but each candidate has lost must-win states before, and the campaigns roll on. If successful, they'll lead their candidates here, as they did me. There's something tremendously addictive about a presidential campaign. Great gauze of excitement, enthusiasm, hope, and energy floating around for the taking. Journalists are rightly criticized for emphasizing the horse race aspects of the campaign, but that's what it is, a huge gamble for the biggest prize in the world. And the bottom line is who's winning and by how much. But there are no real losers in a presidential race. For a while at least, each candidate is permitted to aspire to the most powerful office on earth. It's a quintessentially American theme that any boy can grow up to be president. Who knows? This is Mike Snow in Washington. Thank you. Good night.
Do you think that Reagan's profile of the troops in Lebanon will take some of the steam out of the anti-militarist feelings towards him?
Well, I certainly am happy that he finally came to the right conclusion on saving the lives of those Marines. He's even today dragging his feet on getting the Marines out. He said, I guess now almost 2 weeks ago, that he believed the time had come, but they're still there, at least too many of them are. We are still pursuing in other parts of the world a militaristic approach. Indeed, in Lebanon we are. American shells, American taxpayers' dollars are paying for shells being launched from our ships, firing into villages in central Lebanon and killing innocent women and children. And I don't think that's a foreign policy that the American people want to support or believe in.
Thank you.
If you wouldn't pull the troops out of Honduras and you wouldn't have them support the Contras, what would they be doing there?
Well, what I've said on the troops in Honduras before was that I want to see us interdict the flow of arms across Honduras from Nicaragua across to El Salvador if we possibly can. That meant having some presence perhaps there to try and interdict that flow of arms. But I did not support the Contra activity. I thought it violated our responsibilities under the Organization of American States as well as the Rio Treaty. And I still feel that way, so I have not supported that. The biggest thing we needed to correct in El Salvador is the activity of the right-wing death squads that have been responsible by best estimates of some 2/3 of the deaths in El Salvador. And I have a bill before the Congress now that would require the government of El Salvador to come up with its own plan of how it would control those right-wing paramilitary death squads that have been responsible for an estimated some 30,000 deaths since 1979.
Hey, this is a great table.
Senator, Vice President Mondale has attacked you in sharper and sharper terms. Are you going to respond in kind? And if you don't, are you afraid that you might be seen as too nice a guy to be president?
Well, that's a hard question to answer. I think I'm a nice guy, but not too nice to be president. No, I'll respond when my record is inaccurately stated, as Vice President Mondale has done on civil rights, on arms control, and on certain economic policies. I have, as someone who was not known 3 or 4 weeks ago, I've been under a constant barrage for 3 weeks of assault, negative assault, both in the media and in speeches from former Vice President. That's bound to have a result. I don't think the way to answer that, frankly, is to answer in kind. There are differences. There are going to be some very sharp differences on foreign policy, particularly in Central America and particularly in the Persian Gulf. That's what a campaign ought to be about. But what fundamentally is going on here in this party is a choice between this party's future and its past.
Back there, before I'm called anti-male.
Your nomination ignited a firestorm of hope and enthusiasm among women, but you lost women's vote by about 12 points or so. What do you think that says to the fact that women won't necessarily vote for a woman who's running, and that maybe women don't trust a woman in high public office any more than, say, unliberated men would?
The fact that women won't vote for a woman just because she's a woman, I say bravo. I mean, I don't have any problems with that. I would hope that people would vote for an individual because they think they're the best. It doesn't bother me that people don't vote for me because I'm a woman if they're one. I didn't get all the Italian Americans voting for me either, between us. So I'm not going to beat up on women if I don't beat up on them, and don't beat up on all my Queen's people, because they didn't either. Let me suggest that what's happening now with women is that they're beginning to vote much more independently, and I think that's good. I think that you mentioned that they voted for Reagan by 12 points more than they voted for us. But there still was a gender gap, and the spread was not 12 points in the campaign. In the final returns, it was 18 points. So we did better amongst women than we did amongst men. And I don't think that's so bad. I would have loved for them to come out and supported us by 99 and 44 100%. But they didn't. And they didn't because many people, as I've said time and time again, women voted in large measure the way men did. They voted on the economy. Let me also say that in 1978, when I was running for Congress for the first time, somebody came up to me and whacked me on the back and said, "You're Italian, I'm going to vote for you." And I walked away and I said, "I'll take it. Any way you want to vote for me, I'll take whatever the vote is, it's fine. But that really is a terrible reason to vote for somebody. And they're going to luck out because I'm going to be good." I would prefer, and I know there are some women who voted for me for us, for Fritz and me, because I was a woman. There are some who voted against the ticket because, but the optimum for women in this country running for office is that people ignore our gender when they go to the polls and vote for the ticket or the individual because that's the best qualified to do the job. When you eliminate gender, it gives us all an opportunity to move ahead.
We're saying that there'll never be a ticket without a woman now, that women will be on every ticket.
I don't know if a woman will always choose a man to go with her as vice president. Who knows? I don't know. I don't think that that's a fact. I think that once you eliminate gender, that people feel comfortable picking two people on the ticket. I think it'll be hard. Much as it's still very hard. We all tend to sit down and want to balance in our mind the ticket. And now it's another piece of the puzzle being entered in.